Cool.
We are live. Well, good morning, everyone. Training today is in the morning. A little bit of a change because we have a special guest with us who was only available in the morning, and I just really wanted to brought her in to really share her knowledge and expertise with us. Hi, Iman. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you for adjusting the schedule. I'm on the East Coast, so when you normally do a training at like 6 p.m., I'm like asleep by that time. So I appreciate the flexibility. But thank you for bringing me on. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a little bit sad because of what's going on in California, and then
Yeah.
all the fire, and a lot of my lovely audience and followers are from there. And so I just wanted to mention that my heart and family, my heart goes out to everybody who's affected directly or indirectly by the fires. It's really sad, but it's the second day or third at this point. I don't know, and seems like it's a little bit contained. And so yeah, so I mean, we're going to be talking about mindset, and part of it is that, how we react to things that happen around us and,
Yeah.
affect us to what degree. I know this is something like that a lot of us don't have control over, but what we do after this, especially if you're home, um, was not affected, and how do you just kind of move on and pick up the pieces so you can continue, mentally, physically be at your best, or strive to be at your best. So yeah, again, thank you for being here. We're going to be tackling the topic of mindset. I did want to leave this topic to January since, everybody, I mean, that's the first step of just launching your health journey, right?
For sure.
And so yeah, first I want to just to acknowledge Iman and her extensive knowledge. She's been coaching for 6 years, and she focuses on mainly women and helping them just eliminate the yo-yo cycle, dieting, and all
Yeah.
the craziness, and focuses more on a balanced, right, lifestyle, without doing anything extreme, whether it comes to nutrition and fitness. Yeah, so again, thank you for being on, and let's tackle this. Uh so let me see. I want First I want to ask you what got you into coaching, and how did mindset affect you in your own personal journey, and into any decision into getting into nutrition coaching and fitness coaching as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny. They say you can't remember certain things like earlier than a certain age. So I don't know how old I was when I had this conversation with my dad. Maybe I was like 6 or 7. It was at the first house, like the house I was born in, which we moved away when I was 8. So it must have been before that. And I was taking a walk with my dad, and we were talking about something we were going to do later in the day. And I remember just being really pessimistic about it. Like, I think we were hoping that this is so silly, but I think we were hoping that the local Toys R Us had a toy that I wanted in stock. And I remember telling my dad, like, it's sold out everywhere. There's no way I'm going to get it. And my dad looked at me and he was like, why are you so negative all the time? He's like, where do you get that? Like, I'm not like that. Your mom's not like that. Like, where does that come from? And I specifically remember having that conversation. And of course, when I was 6 or 7, like, I didn't think much of it. I just was like, whatever. But I remember, like, as I grew up, kind of looking back at that, and I feel like I've always had a somewhat like pessimistic and fixed mindset in my life. For example, in high school, I played softball and I wasn't very good to start. And instead of thinking to myself, like, I can practice, I can get better, like, this is something I can grow at, I'm athletic, I'll figure this out. I sort of was just like, I suck. Like, I can't believe I even made the team. Why are they keeping me? Like, I saw no potential in myself. I had no like belief in myself. And it was the same thing with school. I was actually a really good student. But anytime I thought that I was bad at something, I just sort of like gave up on it. Like, I didn't try to get better at anything. So now that I'm a coach, and I'll get to that in a second, but I've learned that there are different types of mindsets you can have. So there's a fixed mindset, which is where you basically believe that you are just born with a certain, list of capabilities and you can't really get better at anything. And this is just kind of who you are. And then there's a growth mindset, which is where you believe you can change, you believe you can get better at pretty much anything you put your mind to. There's actually research that shows that some of the most successful people, or one of the things I should say, rather, that determines if someone's going to be successful in life, financially, with health, with everything, is whether or not they have a fixed or a growth mindset. And so I didn't learn about this until years later. But the reason I started off with this is because, I went through my own health journey and I realized that just the way I was thinking about things was all wrong. I had a fixed mindset. I just thought I was going to be stuck at the same body type and the same weight. I really punished myself. Like, I didn't come at my journey from a place of love. It wasn't like I want to take better care of my body, I want to become stronger. It was like, I feel fat, I need to get this weight off, like I look disgusting, I'm ugly, I'm unlovable. So I just had I started this with all the wrong sort of in the wrong mental headspace, I should say. And throughout my journey, I've had to switch my mindset up a lot. And so now
Mhm.
when I coach clients, I really start to see these like limiting beliefs that people have, this fixed mindset, these just kind of obstacles that get in our way mentally, and how that translates into our physical health journey. So I'm really passionate about getting the mental side figured out, because I've worked with people. In fact, I was having a conversation with a client about this yesterday. When she has her to-do list, right? I give my clients like a daily checklist to-do list. It's like, take a structured walk, eat mainly whole natural foods, drink your water, whatever. When she checks those items off of her list, we consistently see the scale go down week after week. But she'll get into these like ruts where she just feels depressed and unmotivated, and it sets her back, and she gains like 5 pounds every time because she just goes into like a complete hole and gets depressed. And so our entire coaching call yesterday was about trying to figure out what triggers those down times for her. And the reason I bring that up is because this is not exclusive to this particular client. This is something I see with women all around, where just like your mindset towards getting healthy is totally ass backwards, and it needs to be addressed, or you're going to get stuck in the same cycles over and over. So that's a
Mhm.
long-winded answer to your question, but that is how I
Yeah.
started talking about it.
No, that's great. That's great because there's no like two sentence that like answers it because like with mindset it's not all black or white, you know.
Yeah.
But that's it gives us a great, overview of how you got into this. And I mean, you talked about a lot of things that we're going to go elaborate on, and so when you mentioned about this client that, they follow something and then all of a sudden they get depressed and things go backwards, they have this all or nothing mentality too.
Yeah.
So let's address that. How does that affect one's progress over time? Because a lot of people have this mentality of perfectionism. So they go all in because there's a challenge, I'm doing something, and they
Yes.
often treat their health journey as a challenge too. I mean, it is a
Yes.
challenge, but like a 70-day, 75-day challenge type, or
Yeah.
30-day, like I'm going to do this hardcore, I'm not even going to put one drop of whatever I'm not supposed to in my mouth, and then
Yep.
once it's done, like I've accomplished it, I've succeeded it. That's how they take it. Well, we
Yeah.
know this is not how it goes. There's going to be distractions, or you know just obstacles, because that's how it is anytime you try anything new and dive into something new, which again relates to the fixed mindset. And how you deal with it if you have a fixed mindset. So talk to us about the all or nothing mentality. How does it hurt someone?
Yeah, the first time I remember learning about the all or nothing mentality was actually in college. I studied psychology, that was my major, and I took a class on personality psychology, which was really interesting. And we did a lesson on what are called cognitive biases. So, cognitive biases are basically these like default patterns that our brains go into that show up in our life and actually hold us back. And the reason that our brains are wired this way is because as humans, we're wired to survive, right? We're wired to run away from predators. We're wired to keep the species going. And in today's day and age, that's not always helpful, right? Obviously, we have a lot more luxuries than we did thousands of years ago. And so some of these sort of primitive thought patterns can kind of get in our way. So one of them is one that I'm sure your audience is familiar with, which is called catastrophizing, which is basically one small thing goes wrong and people blow it completely out of the water, right? So they eat a single French fry at a birthday party or something, and then they decide that that's going to make them fat, and that they're never going to get to their goal weight or whatever, right? So that's
Or
an
I
example.
failed, so I'm going to throw
Yes.
everything out the window. And
So
yes.
so that exactly what you're alluding to there, Cynthia, is the all or nothing mentality, and that is actually a cognitive bias. which is
Oh,
it's called
separate
all
than the
yes, it's a separate one.
catastrophic. Okay.
Yes.
Ooh.
So there's catastrophizing, which is one of them. There's should statements. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. That's one that people kind of default to a lot. And then they're all or nothing or black or white or polarized thinking. They're all three names for the same thing. Is what you're alluding to there, where it's like you ate that one French fry at your kid's birthday party and then you say F it, and now you're gonna go eat an entire box of French fries and the entire birthday cake and that whole thing. So we as humans have a very difficult time living in that gray area. But the reality is, most progress is born in that gray area. In that 80% consistency, in that I showed up to the gym and I didn't have the world's best workout, but I still went to the gym, or I had to get fast food today because I was running late and that was my only option, but I made a good decision at that fast food place, right? That's really the mentality that you need to have going into your weight loss journey, because otherwise you are putting yourself on polar extremes and that doesn't serve you. Being perfect doesn't serve you because it's not sustainable, and obviously doing nothing at all doesn't serve you because you're doing nothing at all. And so it's really important. It holds people back because exactly what you said, we kind of have this like I'm on plan or off plan mentality, and realistically like that's not how this works. You're not on or off plan. You're just on a journey. And some days are going to be better than others, but no one's expecting perfection out of you. But you have to be able to show up in some capacity every single day.
And I mean, that's great. And why do you think most people don't fall into the gray area, don't automatically adopt that way of thinking? Do you think it comes from childhood or school?
Yeah.
How, like, if you make a mistake, you get a bad grade and it's it, or where
Yeah.
does it come from?
Yeah, great question. I think some of it is what I was alluding to earlier, is just like wired in our brain. Like we as humans are wired to like see patterns. We're wired to sort things out very to the extremes. In fact, like we're really good if you give us they've done studies on this where like if there's like a page with 1,000 black dots, but there's one blue dot, our eyes immediately dart to the blue
Yeah,
dot. Like we're so
right.
good at like creating those like out groups and in groups and stuff like that. And we do this, socially and politically as well, right? So it makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense. So I think
right.
some of it is yeah, we're hardwired. I do think so you're basically asking like the nature versus nurture question. Like, is it something you're born with or is it something that you kind of get socialized into? I really think it's both, because I have clients who, for example, grew up in families where they were, there was a lot of pressure on them to succeed, and they would get a B plus on their math test. And even though, I mean, I think a B plus is a great grade. If my kid came home to me and said, I got a B plus on my physics test, I'd be like, you rocked it. Right. But in their home growing up, right, a B plus was like a complete failure. So they
Uh,
had that binary way of thinking where it's like, I either get it 100% or I get or anything else is just sucks and it's a complete failure. So there's a lot that goes into it. Unfortunately, extremes are romanticized in diet culture as well, with things like,
mhm.
The Biggest Loser, where we see people running on the treadmill and someone screaming in their face, or,
Yeah,
like really intense boot camp classes, or like we look at like the training days of an athlete and aspire to like recreate those. And that's the extreme. And that's just not realistic for most people.
right.
So I think people feel this pressure to be doing so much when in reality, like, I tell people this all the time. If you get 1% better every single day, that feels like nothing day by day. But at the end of the year, you're 365% better. You're almost 4 times the person that you were in the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's so important to remember that those little changes make huge differences as you keep going.
Yeah, the compound effect of things, and that's where most people struggle because we are stuck in like perfectionism and unsustainable diets or workout plans, right? I mean,
Yeah.
depends if you're a mom. Now, if you're training to do a bodybuilding competition, it's extreme, but then there's
Yeah.
a deadline and you have a reason for it. But when you are changing your lifestyle and looking into losing weight and everything, anything that's not sustainable, you're gonna put that pressure on yourself and feel like a failure because you are bound to unrealistic demands and plan and action steps that are not going to fit into your lifestyle
Yeah.
schedule or whatever it is, and then you're going to feel like you're failing. So I feel like so that's why it's so important going into it, not blaming yourself entirely too, right?
Yeah.
Now the mindset matters, but also checking what you're getting yourself into, right?
Yes.
That's probably a lot of times what happens too, because they expect so much of themselves while setting unrealistic expectations on themselves and unrealistic plans. Um,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that you work with a lot of like moms over 30, right? And so
correct.
inherently, if you're a mom, you have so many other responsibilities on your plate, right? Like you're gonna have to maybe drive
Yeah,
your kids around or pack their lunches or whatever it is. Like you have all these responsibilities on your day-to-day schedule. And then for some reason, you gravitate towards like a super restrictive extreme diet that just doesn't usually fit in with your lifestyle. Like, are you realistically going to cook yourself a separate meal that you cook your family? Are you going to hold yourself to strict fasting standards and times and stuff like that? Like, is that
yeah,
going to work for you long term, right? And
yeah.
if the answer is no, if you are about to try a diet or something and you ask yourself the following question, can I do this for the rest of my life? And your answer to that question is no, you probably shouldn't do it at all.
Yep, yep. And well, there was a lag. Yeah, and anything you do with hating it, if you're not going to learn anything from it, and for example, fasting, it has some benefits to it,
For
but
sure.
if I you were to tell me, okay, if you have 5 pounds of fat to lose, if you fast for 5 days versus it's going to take you 2 months and adding more steps to your day, I would go that route because
Right.
first, I'm not in a hurry to lose that fat. Like it's not depressing me, or it's not affecting my health per se, but I don't want to do anything extreme or anything that's going to affect my mental well-being and affect
Yeah.
my socializing, so I mean, it's important for people to know there's ways to do things as well,
Yeah.
because I mean, when you mention the word diet or needing to lose weight, people are paranoid because they think automatically starving, that I'm going to
Yeah.
be eating very
Suffering.
little and giving up the foods that I love, having low
Yep.
energy, because most diets out there have ruined it. They
Yeah.
see it as something negative, right? So
Yep.
yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. So yeah, let's talk about like solutions. So if someone has a fixed mindset, how do you guide them to kind of slowly get into more growth mindset in your coaching journey when you're coaching them? What's
Yeah. So I like to do it in a more kind of structured way because, I first explain the concept to clients like, okay, there are certain areas of your life where you have a fixed mindset and your health is one of them, right? So what I try to do is I try to identify the specific limiting beliefs that are holding that client back and then also give them evidence of other areas where they've been able to improve. So sometimes if a client's skeptical right off the bat, I'll ask something like, for example, I was talking to someone via chat the other day and we were just going back and forth and I was giving her general advice. And she's like, I don't know if I can learn how to track my food. I'm kind of a lazy person. And I said, oh, okay. What do you do for work? And she said, oh, I'm a practicing psychologist. And I was like, oh, okay. Going in the back of my mind, knowing, okay, if you're a counseling psychologist, you have done an undergrad, you've gotten an undergrad degree, you've done your PhD, you've done clinical study, like all this stuff. I said, do you feel like you've been lazy in your career? And she's like, no, I'm really hardworking. And I'm like, okay, so why are you lazy when it comes to macros? You're not a lazy person. You just have a fixed mindset in this specific area, right? So I think it's helpful or a little bit more, I don't know, the practical way of going about it is to kind of highlight the specific areas that you feel like a client just lacks that belief in themselves. And then, belief in yourself comes from doing what you say you're going to do and showing up for yourself. So as coaches, this is part of our challenge is to find small steps that clients can take that they actually feel confident they can take, and being able to do those, day in and day out consistently, right? So if client has a fixed mindset about meal prepping, that's a big one. Oh, I can't possibly meal prep, I don't have time, whatever. It's like, okay, nobody's asking you to put all, prep all 3 meals every day and put them all in the little containers and do all that. Like, that's a lot of work. I get that. Can you just meal prep like 2 dinners for yourself this week? Or can you make a big batch of something that can be frozen and then you can reheat it when you need a meal? Like, just kind of breaking it down, I think is really helpful. But the first step is explaining the difference between like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and just planting that seed and showing them that, like, look, there are so many areas of your life where you believed you could get better and you did. So why is this any different?
Absolutely. Wow. So you're saying self-awareness is important sometimes to you got to point that out because they have no clue that they are actually in a fixed mindset. So,
Yeah.
and for order for someone to change, they need to be aware of it. And as coaches, that's our job to identify like their
Yeah.
weaknesses and shifting that mindset. Yeah. And it takes time and practice. I've
Yeah.
had to do it. I tell clients like what you tell yourself, it's whatever you tell yourself, you're right. So if you
Yes.
say, I'm not a morning person, but also I'm not, the whole process of changing or losing weight, it's not just like focusing on the end result and goal, but it's the process, right? You
Exactly.
have to train yourself to change into a person who, Iman 20 pounds less, she's a completely different person with a different mindset. what
Yes.
what would she do if she had to, do something, her lifestyle? She is meal prepping. She's not saying, well, I'm too lazy, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
You have to force yourself sometimes and make sacrifices when you have a goal, but the whole point is to transform yourself into your future self. Say, how is Cynthia acting in the future?
Yes.
How is she making excuses not to go to the gym because, I mean, she's worried about her uh parents, I mean, family in California that she has no control over.
Yeah.
If I sit
Yeah.
5 hours worrying and crying, nothing's gonna change either way.
Yeah.
Anyways, things like that affect the whole thing, and it could carry yourself into like a week and say, oh, maybe this isn't for me, I'm not motivated enough, and
Yeah.
then that's when nothing happens because all or nothing mentality, it's hard to separate
It
because it
is.
all like weaves in, right? So
It
you
all
get,
snowballs. Yeah. And you
yes.
you kind of brought up something probably unintentionally, but it came to my mind is like you brought up the idea of what's my identity? Like who do I identify as? And that's a big one that I think a lot of people would benefit from thinking about it this way. It's like instead of giving yourself a goal, maybe you have someone watching or listening who wants to lose 30 pounds in 2025. Instead of giving yourself a goal of I want to lose 30 pounds in 2025, here's how I would frame it. I want to be the person who is 30 pounds lighter than my current version of myself. So if I had the goal of 30 pounds of weight loss, I would literally, I give this exercise to my clients, sit down and make a list. What does the version of me who's 30 pounds lighter, who's more confident and happier, what does she do on a daily basis? Write it all down. You know what it is. You know she goes to the gym consistently. You know she gets her steps in. You know she drinks her water, which I see us both guzzling down right now. You know she
Yes.
meal preps, you know she eats blah 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 blah, whatever it is. Write a list of those things down and then you're going to look at that list and you're going to be so overwhelmed and be like, "Oh my god, I can't possibly do all this." You're right. You can't possibly do it all at once. So pick the 2 to 3 things that feel the most comfortable for you and the easiest and do them over and over and over again until they are a habit and then pick another one
Yeah.
and do that over and over and over again until it's a habit. That is how you transform your life. That's how you lose weight and actually keep it off, because you can also go the route of I'm going to do 75 hard. I'm going to sign up for a transformation challenge. I'm going to take Herbalife shakes every day. That's fine. You might lose weight doing that, but I can guarantee you, you're not going to keep it off with that method.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Can you believe I've never done 75 hard? Maybe back in the day I tried it, but then I'm like, why? Because it's just
Yeah.
like people who, lack structure and discipline are doing it. I'm like, for sure I can do it. But then I was like, it doesn't fit in within my lifestyle to do
Yeah.
a workout outside and inside where I have
Yeah. I
kids
know.
and so why bother? And everyone, not everyone, but majority I've seen who were dieters and did it, they were depressed, and as soon as they felt accomplished because they did it right, but as soon as they were done because they were deprived of alcohol or everything, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, right away within like the week or two everything comes right back.
Yep.
And they don't keep up with those habits because it felt forced and
Yes.
not working towards something that's a lifestyle, just short
Yes.
term for the it was just the extrinsic motivation just to get that
Yes.
goal, challenge completed. Yes. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's, oh my gosh, that's great stuff we're talking about here. Let me see. Oh, we tackled the all or nothing. I had a question about that. Um, So with consistency, right? Because it's little habits that build up over time,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're not used to those. So we say we're not that person because we just haven't done it yet. So we don't believe that we can, right? But so
Yeah.
how can we build consistency when someone's really juggling a lot? Especially with moms, personal life, activities, kids, and work. How do we where do we start and how do we measure like consistency? Do you tell them to just prioritize and then build over? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, great question. I actually asked this to a mindset expert who I had on my show, Coach Mike Milner. He came on a couple weeks ago, and I asked him basically the same question, and he gave a brilliant response. So now I've started thinking about it this way too. He basically said, like, first off, we need to define what consistency actually looks like, because
Uh-huh.
most people think consistency means doing it every single day perfectly. And that's not true. You and I, like if we had a client, we gave them the goal, let's say their goal was to get 130 grams of protein in per day. And you checked in with them after 2 weeks, and 12 out of the 14 days, they got 100 and whatever I just said, 130 grams of protein in every day, right? If they were to
Yeah,
accomplish that goal 12 out of the 14 days between check ins, as a coach, would you consider that consistent?
absolutely.
Yeah. So there might be a client that looks at that and says, I wasn't consistent. Right.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then because in their mind, they set this standard of I wasn't consistent, they believe they can't be consistent. And so they just stop doing it, which actually leads them to be inconsistent. So step one
Yeah.
is to be realistic about what you can be consistent with and
Mhm.
define consistency. If I told you that 80%, 80 to 85% checking off a goal was consistent, I feel like that would relieve a lot of pressure from you, right? And then I think it's important to have an objective way to actually measure consistency. What with my coaching business, we use an app called Coach Catalyst, which is just very similar to like Trainerize or my coach is what it's called, but Trainerize, I think Everfit is one, whatever it is, like whatever app you use to deliver workouts and stuff to your clients. And we have a section where we can add goals for clients and it shows their compliance, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to have a place where you're actually checking these things off, whether it's an app if you're working with a coach, or you're just making a to-do list and checking it off every day. Or one of my favorite methods is very simple. Like, let's say I have a goal of getting 10,000 steps a day. On my calendar, I either put a check or an X. I either got 10,000 steps or I didn't. And I know that's
Yeah.
kind of binary, but that can help us see consistency as well. So I do believe we need to actually track it because humans are notoriously bad at remembering things. Like if I asked you what you ate for breakfast a week ago, unless you eat the same thing every single day, which I know a lot of us in the fitness industry do, you might not be able to tell me, right? Or maybe you say something with full confidence and it's actually not what you ate just because you remembered it incorrectly, not because you were trying to lie about it, right? So we have so much other stuff going on in our lives. We need an easy way of tracking things. And then actually see and evaluate. And here's the part that I think a lot of people miss. If you set a goal and you absolutely flop at it, don't just keep trying to go for that goal over and over again until you lose confidence and give up on yourself. If your goal was 10,000 steps and right now that's way too much for you, start with
Mhm.
8,000. I had this conversation with a client the other day. She's been averaging like 6,000 steps per day. And then she came at me and was like, I want to start doing 10,000 steps. And I said, why don't we start with 8,000? Because you're biting off more than you can chew. And if you crush 8,000, cool, we'll move up to 10,000. But
Yep.
I think that's an important, piece of the puzzle as well, is just being realistic about the goals that you're setting, having an objective way to check off whether or not you did them. So actually being able to measure that progress and then reflecting and refining as you need to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this. Yes, that was on point.
Thank you.
Measurable data is so important. Numbers do not lie, right?
Yeah.
And then you could see and evaluate. Yeah, this was genius. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna
Of
have to
course.
share this with a lot of my clients because it's just on point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm getting phone calls. I don't want that. Okay, this is another one, and I do have clients who kind of struggle with this, the guilt that comes with missing a workout, right?
Yeah.
It's also with the consistency, 12 out of 14, and then they're so hard on themselves because
Yeah.
they just, or I have a client who does wonderful. He eats over 250 grams of protein, all of that, 4,000 calories, but then, and they travel a lot, but then he's like, I messed it up. And I check, it's like he went over, because his standards are very high and his rate of success is very high too because of
Yeah.
that, which I admire it. But then we're working on him not punishing himself for doing
Yeah.
something little that it's really not that bad, right?
Yeah.
And so when they indulge a little bit, or go over under where it's not even that bad, how do we help them move past like the guilty feeling?
Yeah. So first off, guilt is a helpful, it's a I like to say that all uncomfortable emotions are communicators to us, whether it's
Mhm.
anxiety, depression, whatever it is. It's your body's way of trying to communicate. In my opinion, guilt is your body's way of communicating that you didn't do something you said you were going to do. You're not meeting your standards. You are whatever it is, right? It just shows that you care, right? So just
Yeah.
accept that. I feel guilty about this because I care. And that's
Mhm.
honestly a win for a lot of people
Yeah. Yeah.
because you don't feel guilty about skipping workouts or eating like crap when you don't care about it. And it's important that you do care when you're on this
Yes.
journey, right?
Yes.
It's funny we're having this conversation. I have a group coaching course and I give like mini lessons
Yeah.
every week to those clients. And this week's mini lesson was on shame and the role of shame in weight loss. And I think shame and guilt go together. I think guilt is more so when you feel when you're basically like not feeling proud of a certain action. Shame is one step further where it's like you don't feel proud of who you are because of a certain action, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think it's important to make that distinction, number one. And then also, it's one thing to mess up, to not hold yourself up to your standards, but all you're doing by shaming yourself is making you feel worse and making it more likely that you're going to continue to miss your goals, because shame is not a powerful motivator at all, right? Like when you are encouraging your kid to do something, I mean, you're a parent, right? So like, let's say your daughter or son comes home and they say, oh my gosh, I failed my math test. As a parent, would you say, oh my god, you're such a failure, you suck, you're not smart? Or would you say, okay, we let's figure out how we can do this better? Can you study more? Do you need me to help you find a tutor? Like which one would you choose as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, try to see, okay, how we can do it better and focus
Right.
more on solution than, okay, what the outcome was.
Right. So we're like that with our
Not
kids.
punishing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with our kids and our family members and stuff. But then to us, to ourselves, we're so, hard on ourselves and we're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
punish you, right? Oh, you didn't hit your protein goal today? Well, you're gonna eat double it tomorrow, and it just doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. So I really just think that it's easier said than done, but you can help yourself, I should say, by identifying the areas that you tend to shame yourself, right? It's usually disguised as negative self-talk where you say things to yourself like, I'm lazy, I don't follow up with commitments, I'm not cut out
Yeah.
for this, all that stuff. Identify that and switch it into self-compassion. Like, okay, I
Mhm.
missed my goal today. You can learn from it. Why did I miss my step goal? What could I do better? And then use it as an opportunity to improve rather than an opportunity to beat yourself up, because nobody responds well to that type of punishment.
Yeah. Yeah. Criticizing yourself, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just assess what happened. Why was I like that? How can I do better next time? And you
Yeah.
feel like talking to someone about it would help too, right?
Yes.
When we're,
100%.
yeah, yeah, so that they could see, yeah, and if, yeah, um, everything we do or fail at it, it's just basically a lesson to improve. And that's
Yes.
where people kind of stop too. I failed, so that's
Yeah.
it. I'm not meant for this. This is what, that's a
Yeah.
sign that I should stop doing this. The
Yeah.
universe is telling me that.
That's
Woe
the
me.
literal that's a literal definition of a fixed mindset. And I want to
Oh,
like re I want to reemphasize too, like you said, how can my clients deal with this guilt? Well, accept it. Just accept that you feel guilty. That's fine. That's part of it. That means that you didn't live up to a standard you set for yourself. And you may need to push yourself harder next time, or you may need to give yourself grace if there was a legitimate excuse, right? God forbid if you were planning to go to the gym, but over in my neck of the woods, we're getting snow, right? Let's say
yeah.
you had every intention of going to the gym on Monday, but on Sunday night at 3 in the morning, or I guess Monday morning at 3 in the morning, there were 8 inches of snow and you couldn't even, like, your street wasn't plowed and you could not get out of your driveway. I don't think your
Yeah.
California audience will relate to this unless they have
Yeah, right.
second homes in like Tahoe or something. But if that's the case and you had every intention of going and you even set your alarm to wake up and you even tried to plow your car out of the driveway, like, you sure, you could feel guilty about that, but you tried your damnedest to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes that's it. Like, you try your hardest and you just can't make it happen. Sometimes you know that you didn't try your hardest. And that's where that guilt comes in and it talks to you and it says, Cynthia, you need to try harder next time. Like, this isn't who you are. This isn't who you want to become. So
Mhm.
it's not that you necessarily want to make that feeling go away. That feeling's a powerful messenger. But you want to listen to it and, do something about it, either learn from it, change your plans next time, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And sometimes, the guilt comes from people who are actually doing everything. But like you
Yeah.
said, it's something to be proud of. That means you really care,
Yes.
and it's a rare, usually it's typically the guilt associated with doing less. But
Mhm.
then with this specific client, it's like, wow, they're like me. And I had to learn to give myself grace. And it
Me
has
too.
helped me because it's become negative. You're so hard on yourself, but you're doing more than 98% of the population already, right? But then you have your
Exactly.
standards so high that it almost paralyzes you too. This is for
Yes.
the overachievers, right? And
Yeah.
so it paralyzes you because you feel like you failed because you didn't give that 100%, just because you were short on protein by like 10 grams, even like as
Right.
little as that. But that's for people who are really on it, which I honor those clients because um it's like hardcore discipline. And that's what usually, like, what it takes too. So grace is a very powerful word as well. Talking about discipline, it's like, and motivation, let's tackle that. It's a huge part of mindset. A lot of people rely on motivation,
Yeah.
and as much as I tell them in the beginning, even when we're doing our goal setting, it's like, yes, of course we're not gonna rely on it, it's a fleeting feeling. But they're so hyped up that they don't even, I think, listen to it. They're like, yeah, I'm motivated, and they feel like I'm going to hold
Yes.
on to it. That's going to carry me far because, yes, I'm dying to lose the weight, but in the process, because of everything that happens, maybe the fixed mindset, the excuses that come in, we lose sight of our goal too, even though our pain points are so high. But then there's no motivation and they're down, and it's like, oh, I can get to do this, I can't get myself to eat more, do this.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with that, and with that mindset of shifting their thinking from like, okay, discipline is to kick in now, or you got to do things that you don't necessarily want to do right now,
Yeah.
um because motivation, it's not going to be our friend always.
Yeah, for sure. I think I used to hold pretty much the exact same view as you did, which I don't think is wrong by any means, but I've almost kind of like adopted that idea of, when you give a dog a pill, but you put it in peanut butter so the dog actually eats the pill. I kind of think about that when I coach my clients. So when a client is really motivated, I ride that hype train with them. I know in my heart it's going to die down, but I
Yeah,
also want to allow them to feel good and to feel motivated. And then I used to give the same advice of you need to be disciplined. The reality is, and I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong as a coach, but what I found, at least with my clients, is that they don't take to that. They know they need to be disciplined, but that's not helpful advice for them. Like, they don't know how. I don't mean to say this in a patronizing way at all, but like, that's why they hired us, is they
yeah,
clearly haven't had that discipline on their own, right? So I look at it two ways. Either a client is motivated and they're riding motivation, or they are building momentum. So I'm always looking at, how do we build momentum? Because we need either motivation or momentum at all times, or a client starts to feel stuck. And the second a client starts to feel stuck, and they start to feel frustrated. And when they feel frustrated, which is the gap between where they are and where they think they should be, that's when they decide they no longer want to work with you, because they feel like nobody's bridging that gap for them. So to answer your question, I'm always looking at, okay, if you're not feeling motivated, how can we get you to feel like you have momentum. And I like to start small, really small, things that you feel really confident with, things that you can accomplish. Some clients have an easier time with nutrition as opposed to workouts. So if that's the case with a client, I might go with a nutrition goal. Some
Yeah.
clients have a great time working out, but they have a harder time with nutrition. So if that's the case, then I might have them do an extra workout that week or bump their steps or something just to get them to feel like they are progressing in some way, shape, or form. That will kind of build that motivation back up. A lot of us think that motivation precedes success, so it comes before, but really success usually comes before motivation.
Mhm. I agree. And sometimes it's like dumbing it down, right? Taking it
Yeah,
back to basics. It's like, okay,
100%.
and or asking them what would help you, extra accountability, do you want me to check on you during the day? Because it's like, I think especially someone who, because discipline comes from you doing the same thing over time. It's like second nature. It's not a
Yes.
burden. Because I personally have not worked out for a long time, and I could not for the life of me work out for over 15 years. My husband tried to drag me to the gym. I'm like, no, I have no goal. I have no reason. I'm not overweight. That's how I thought about the whole process, right? But now I
Yeah.
try to get me out of the gym. I cannot,
Yeah.
so but I built that, you know, it happened in so many different ways. First, I set a goal, right? You do need to have a goal,
Yeah.
and every client starts with a goal, and I feel like we need to remind them of their goal because they forget. Because
Yeah.
because that goal is important to you, you are gonna need to do it. Every coach's approach is a little bit different, but sometimes I try to tell them like if you want this, and you got to work on becoming that person, and again bring back the idea of the you in the future. Right now would not give me this excuse. I know you don't want to do it. I know you'd rather do this instead, but doing this instead your whole life has gotten you here. So,
Yeah.
that's I mean, I think getting the feel of the client too. Sometimes they cannot handle that, and sometimes
Yeah.
they can. So that's why with coaching, there's a lot more than just setting macros for them, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of feeling, how much they can handle. I have clients who tell me like, "Oh, give it to me straight. That's why I hired you." And I love those clients because
Yeah.
I'm those, with
Yeah. That's how I am too.
my own coach. You know what he told me? I showed him, this was years ago. I knew nothing about like fitness, and I showed him a picture of Carrie Underwood's legs, and I said, "That's what I want." And he's
That's a
like, "You're not."
great goal.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm still trying to work towards it. But what's great
Yeah.
is he told me that's not going to happen. And I said, I'm hiring you,
Yeah.
because he just doesn't feed you BS. And a
Yeah.
lot of coaches or anything in the field, I've worked with lawyers, and one of them I hired him because he lied and he gave me something that I wanted to hear, while three other ones said, no, it's not possible. But I went for it and I got fooled, and
Yeah.
so basically people who care about you will give it to you straight, so yeah, I don't know how we got there, but yeah, it's to say everybody operates a different way, softer approach, harder approach, but baby steps or all in, it just varies. But at the end of the day, right, there's gonna have to be some sacrifices. You agree?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, some days I'm motivated more than others, but the days that I'm not, I'm like, those are the days that count. That I don't feel like
Yes.
it, but I gotta show up because one plus one plus one adds up, right?
Yeah. And
So
that,
yeah,
people are always asking, like, oh, I'm not confident in myself. How do I build confidence? It's by showing up on those days when you're not motivated, because then you
yes,
build proof. When you only go to the gym when it's January 1st or you have a wedding you're trying to slim down for, you don't have any confidence in yourself because you're not going to show up on the snowy, cold day or the day that there's something stressful going on or whatever it is. So you build confidence by showing up on those days where it's even harder. You build confidence by setting a goal of taking a 10-minute walk, but taking a 15-minute walk because you push yourself. You build confidence by telling yourself, I think I'm just going to eat out today, and then making the extra effort to cook a meal at home. Like that's how you do it. And that has a profound impact on your mindset and the way you view your entire journey.
absolutely. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So we have tackled a lot. There you go. Building confidence. We tackled that too. What advice would you give
Perfect.
women to feel self-conscious or lack confidence? There you go. We're there. And how do you help clients celebrate small wins and acknowledge their progress?
Yeah, that's a good one. This is something that I admittedly can get better at as a coach, because I kind of go to problem solving mode with clients quite often. And so I have been trying to do a better job of just bringing out those things. Something that I heard on a podcast recently was, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was a gentleman named Adam Grant, I think. But basically, he was talking about how the way that he likes to measure this for himself, he's naturally hard on himself, as many people are, is he
Mhm.
says, like, would the version of you as a kid look up to the version of you right now, or the version of you a year ago look up to the person that you are right now? So I think
Thank you.
about that with clients, right? Like,
Yeah.
you a year ago, would you be proud or would you look up to where you're at right now? And most clients can say yes, because at least they showed up, they're doing their check-ins, they're trying every single week, even if they haven't made profound changes in their health yet. So I think that's helpful. And just, really just understanding that sometimes not regressing is a win. This is a big one. Like during the holiday season, I had a lot of clients who just maintained their weight or only gained like a pound or two. And I'm explaining to them that that's a huge win, because most people gain a bunch of weight during the holiday
Yeah.
season, right? So it's important to do it and to do it consistently and to give ourselves credit, because going back to that conversation of momentum, that's what helps us build momentum. We do not feel motivated. We don't build momentum when we're constantly just crapping on ourselves all the time.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, yes. Self-talk really matters. Well, uh, thank you. Do you have a podcast? Well, I've referred to this book so many
Is
times.
that Carol Dweck?
Yes, yes, the
Yes.
mindset. Uh-huh.
Yep.
I love this. I know it gets a little bit boring in the sense that it goes into research studies a lot,
Yes.
but I just highlight the key points because I am also with my daughter working on that fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Sometimes she's scared to try new things just because she thinks that she's gonna fail, so she doesn't even
Yes.
attempt to do something. So
Yes.
but yeah, this is a great one. So I was asking about if there's a book or podcast or anything specific that comes to mind around this topic to
Well,
you?
I have, not to self promote, but I have
No,
an
no, go ahead.
entire, yeah, I have an entire podcast called The Mindset Diet where I talk all about this.
Okay.
So a lot of the topics I brought up today, I've covered in depth in episodes of that podcast.
Yes.
I
Send me
really
the link
like,
and I'll share it in my group.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I really like Tom Bilyeu. He's a little bit, I don't know, like harsh or strict with certain things. But he has a lot of good episodes. He's the one that taught me about the growth mindset. That book that you're holding is phenomenal read for that. I know that Mel Robbins has a lot of really good stuff on mindset. So that's
Mhm.
another good person to check out. So yeah, I think I
Yeah.
covered most of it.
Yeah. Yay. Thank you so much. Wow, this was fun, very
Yeah.
informative and so not boring. And we
Good. I'm
tackled a
glad.
lot, and I feel a lot of key points and practical tools for clients to just really work on, right? Without getting too philosophical, right?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
goal.
thank you so much for your time,
Of
and
course.
yeah, I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody will as well who gets to watch this. Yeah, any final thoughts or anything, ideas or anything you'd like to share?
No, thank you for having me. I hope this impacted at least one person. And yeah,
Yes.
just
Mhm.
know that this is really the basis of your success on your weight loss journey. So if you're someone that thinks I don't need to work on this, you probably do. We all do.
Uh-huh.
Myself and Cynthia included have things that we need to work on within our own mindset. So don't be afraid of diving into that, because it will translate into so many different areas of your life.
Yes, and work on getting 1% better every day, right?
Exactly, exactly.
All right, thank you again.
Yeah, of course.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.